Are you the one in your relationship that remembers things your partner has long forgotten about? Maybe every time they let you down, every promise they broke, even every moment they chose something else over you. And then during fights, these memories surface like evidence in a trial. You bring them up, not that you're meaning to be cruel, but because they still sting, because they never got resolved, that somewhere inside of you, you're still keeping track. Scorekeeping feels like protection, like if you remember everything, you won't be blindsided again. But here's what scorekeeping actually does: it keeps you trapped in the past, and it destroys intimacy one tally mark at a time. I want to share with you that scorekeeping is not even really about your partner. It's about what you learned watching the people who raised you. In our day to day relationship, it typically starts out with something simple. You're having a conversation about weekend plans. Your partner forgets to mention they committed to helping a friend move. You feel blindsided again. And suddenly, you're not just talking about the weekend plans that have now been rearranged. You're talking about the time 6 months ago when they forgot your work event, and the time before that when they double booked an anniversary dinner, and the time 2 years ago when they promised to pick you up at the airport and somehow forgot. Your partner looks confused, defensive. But we were just talking about the weekend. Why are you bringing up all these things from years ago? But to you, it's all connected. It's not really about the weekend plans, it's about the pattern of feeling like you don't matter enough, of somehow being an afterthought in your own relationships, of the promises that don't seem to stick. So you're keeping a tally of those disappointments and those letdowns every time they didn't show up the way you needed them to. You might say things like, "You never remember what matters to me. You always put your friends first, or work comes before us. This is just like the time when you chose work over our vacation 5 years ago." You've been carrying this relationship and all of its hurts and wounds like a scorecard. I want you to notice the words. Often it seems like there's never and always and years inside of that scorekeeping. They take one moment and turn it into a pattern of evidence that is now against your partner. And here's what makes this so painful. You're not wrong. They probably did those things that your partner did forget. And there was disappointment in the moment they chose golf over a romantic picnic. But bringing it up over and over again doesn't heal the original hurt. It just keeps the wound open. Scorekeeping is what happens when repair hasn't occurred, when the hurt from 6 months ago or 2 years ago never really got acknowledged, certainly didn't get resolved. So it stays alive, not just in your mind, but in your body, as an unhealed injury that gets triggered every time something similar happens. And it adds to the new hurt. I want to invite you to notice your words. Often you'll hear things like never, always, years. These are scorekeeping words. They take one moment and turn it into a pattern of evidence against your partner. And here's what makes it so painful. You're not wrong. These things did happen. Your partner probably did forget. They did disappoint you. They did choose golf over that romantic picnic. But bringing it up over and over again doesn't heal the original hurt. It just keeps the wound open. Scorekeeping is what happens when repair hasn't really occurred, when the hurt from 6 months ago or 2 years ago never got acknowledged, certainly didn't get resolved. So it stays alive, not just in your mind, but in your body, as an unhealed injury that gets triggered every time something similar happens. And it adds to the new hurt. It adds the new hurt to the old pile, preparing for the next time you need to protect your heart from disappointment. Because that's really what scorekeeping is, self-protection. But there's a big cost. Your partner stops being the person you love and starts being someone you're building a case against. And if left unchecked, both of you are so buried under resentment, you can't find another way back to each other. Have you ever wondered, where does this come from? Why do some people keep score and other people just seem to let it go? It almost always goes back to what you witnessed growing up, specifically what you watched your parents do with hurt and disappointment. Maybe your mom remembered every time your dad was late, every missed anniversary, every broken promise, and she would bring it up in arguments, even in casual conversation, as proof that he was unreliable, or maybe he was selfish, or somehow he just didn't care enough. You watched her hold on to the hurt. You watched her use the past like ammunition, and you watched your dad shrink because he didn't know what to say to make it better. He felt like it was an honest mistake. And even if you hated seeing this, even if you promised yourself you would never do that, the pattern lives in your body now because it's what you learned love looked like when it was struggling, when it was challenged. Maybe you watched the opposite. Maybe one parent let everything go, never mentioned the disappointments, never really addressed the hurt, just kept moving forward like all was well. And you saw how that played out too. The resentment building silently, the emotional distance growing, and it lived out like quiet bitterness that settled across everything. So you learned that if you don't keep track, if you don't hold people accountable, you're going to end up simmering with resentment. Both patterns teach the same lesson, as opposite as they sound. And hurt that is not addressed does become resentment. And resentment tends to live somewhere. For some people, it lives in silent withdrawal, and for others, it lives in scorekeeping. Here's something else you might have learned. Maybe you watched your mom do everything for your dad. Manage the house, raise the kids, handle the logistics of life, and your dad took it for granted. You saw her exhaustion, her frustration. You heard her complaints to friends, or maybe even to you, how she did everything and he did nothing. And this is something that built inside of you. You thought, if I don't keep score, people are going to take advantage of me. If I don't track who's doing more, I'm going to end up carrying everything alone. So you're doing this now to try to avoid the imbalance inside of your relationship. So just take a notice inside of what goes on for you day to day. Do you track who did the dishes last? Who planned the last date? Who initiated sex? Who apologized first? Who's trying harder? It's not because you're petty. It's likely because you're terrified of becoming your mom. Invisible, depleted, taken for granted. It's not about the relationship that you're in now. It's about the relationship you watched as a child, the environment you grew up in, the one that taught you how to handle disappointment and hurt, how to move through love and what those unspoken expectations are. Now, if we go back to scorekeeping and really why it's so damaging, it tends to keep you focused on what your partner is not doing instead of what they are doing. You can't let yourself feel held or supported either by a conversation or affection because you're too busy cataloging the failures. You stop seeing their efforts because you're waiting for them to mess up again. Your lens becomes clouded and you're looking at your current partner through the resentment you inherited from what you watched your parents do. Of course, your partner feels it. They feel the weight of your disappointment. Maybe they feel like they're paying for crimes they didn't commit. So they stop trying because maybe they feel like, what's the point if nothing I'm doing is ever good enough, anyways? And now you have proof that they don't care, which just adds another tally to the score, which pushes them even further away. You can see how the cycle kind of feeds itself. When your partner forgets something important, you're not just hurt by them. You're re experiencing every time your dad forgot, every time your mom was disappointed, every time love felt conditional or unreliable. Your body doesn't know the difference between back then and there and the here and now. So it responds with the same level of hurt, the same need to protect. This is called an unresolved family imprint. And until you see it for what it is, you're going to keep projecting it onto your partner. So, what do you do if you recognize yourself in this pattern? If you realize you're keeping score and it's negatively impacting your relationship? First, acknowledge what is actually going on. You're afraid of being invisible like your mom was, maybe afraid of being taken for granted. You're afraid that if you let things go, you're going to lose yourself completely. Or you're afraid of being unfairly blamed, like your dad was. You're afraid that nothing you do will ever be enough, that you're going to be punished forever for honest mistakes. What we want to do here is really name what's going on. Because once you know what you're actually protecting yourself from, you can ask whether that's based in current reality today or if it's really being shaped by past experiences. There's a really important step that I don't think any of us can skip over. It's grieving what didn't get resolved inside of your parents' marriage. Because these are some of these sticky pieces that we might end up replicating. If you watched your mom carry resentment for decades, you likely absorbed that. It's living in your body now. You want to release what you inherited from her. Now, this is not about blaming your parents. It's really acknowledging what you saw, what you observed, what you lived inside of, and how it shaped you. Your mom's resentment is hers to carry, not yours. You don't have to keep a scorecard on her behalf. You don't have to replay in your marriage what you watched happen in theirs. Maybe you watched your dad get criticized constantly. You absorbed that too. So, to really understand what's behind scorekeeping, it happens when disappointments don't get addressed in the moment, when you swallow your hurt because you don't want to seem needy or difficult or demanding, when you tell yourself it's fine when it's actually not fine. Those unaddressed hurts do not disappear, they accumulate, and eventually they come out sideways in fights that are about something else entirely. So you have to practice saying what hurts when it hurts, not 6 months later, but in the moment. And so it might sound something like, when you forgot to mention your plans, I ended up feeling like an afterthought, and that really hurts. When you choose work over the dinner out I was looking forward to, I feel like I don't matter as much as your job. Can we talk about that? Notice that you're letting go of the always or you never. You're talking about just this moment, this hurt, this need for repair. If your partner can meet you there, if you can acknowledge the impact of that moment, then the hurt doesn't accumulate. It gets addressed, and you can both move forward. Now, if your partner can't meet you there, maybe they dismiss or deflect or defend, when you're trying to be vulnerable and express your hurt honestly, that gives you different information. That tells you that repair is going to be really difficult and scorekeeping is probably inevitable. A way to really gain traction is to start keeping score of the good too. Notice when they try. Notice when they show up. Notice when they remember. if they apologize and when they make an effort. If you're only looking for evidence that they don't care, that they're going to disappoint you, that's what you're going to find. Have you ever heard of confirmation bias? Well, it's real. Your brain filters out anything that contradicts what you already believe. But if you're looking for evidence that they are loving, that they are supportive, you're going to find that too. And suddenly, that balance of what's happening looks different. Another essential step to resolving this dynamic is letting the hurts of the past actually be complete. You can't keep bringing up something from 2 years ago and expect your relationship to move forward in a good way. At some point, you have to decide, can I let what happened back there go? If I'm not able to, how do I have the conversation to let what needs to be complete done? I know there might be big things back there, and I know that that other person might need to take accountability for it so that it can finally change. But your work is really moving towards letting the past be the past. Now, I'm not talking about ignoring patterns. If the same hurt keeps happening, if your partner still continues to do things that upset you, that cause so much hurt and disappointment, you do need to figure out what's going on there. And that means addressing it now, not keeping it quiet so that you're not rocking the boat. Maybe your parents' marriage taught you something about how to handle disappointment in love. Maybe that's where you learned to keep track. Maybe it taught you that resentment is just a part of long-term love. And now that you can see it from this perspective, maybe you don't have to run that pattern anymore. You can choose to repair in real time instead of storing hurt for later. You can choose to name what you need instead of punishing your partner for not reading your mind. You can choose to release what belongs to the past instead of carrying it into every fight. This is not easy work. It requires you to look at what you inherited and decide what you want to keep and what you're ready to release. It's the only way I know of to stop repeating the same painful patterns in your relationship today. The only way to create a relationship that feels different from the one you grew up watching. You deserve a relationship where hurt gets addressed, not tallied up or weaponized. You deserve a relationship where disappointment doesn't become resentment, where you can let go of the past instead of living in it. It starts with recognizing the scorekeeping for what it is, an inherited pattern that no longer serves you. And once you see it, you can choose to put it down. If you want to understand the specific family imprints shaping your relationship, take the Reveal Your Family Imprint quiz. It will show you exactly what you inherited and what needs to shift. There's a link for that free quiz in the description. Maybe you'd like some weekly insights on breaking these kind of cycles. You're invited to join my Sunday Relationship Tips newsletter, and you can also join that in the description below. This channel is all about seeing the invisible forces keeping you stuck so you can choose what comes next with clarity. Subscribe to stay connected. You don't have to keep score to be safe. There's another way, and it starts with understanding where the pattern comes from.